Hello, in this video we are going to show you how to assemble a SNAILS version 2.0. So the main difference in this one from our version 1.0 is that we are now using an Eppendorf upright pipette versus our ovationed self-standing pipette that we used in the original. This version is also much sleeker and can be attached to a movable arm or a ring stand or whatever fits in your lab. So for this, I already have much of the circuitry already assembled, and you can go to our SNAILS version 1.0 if you need a refresher on how to assemble all the circuitry. It's all exactly the same. The only difference is that you are using a Raspberry Pi 0 rather than a Raspberry Pi 3. Now to start, we've got 4 distinct 3D printed parts. We have our first clip side, we have a clip side 2, or a mount assembly is what it's called in the repository. We have one large gear that fits on top of the pipette, and then we have one small gear that will fit on top of the motor. So to start, we take both of the 2 clip sides, and as you'll notice, if we take an upright view of them, you can see that one side is rounded on the end and the other is filled in, so that this will slide into this groove and comes around and should be a couple millimeters apart on this side, but they should be completely parallel and they can be pulled together if necessary. And this is how you're going to pinch the pipette into place. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our pipette, we're just going to set it on this side. We're going to take our other side. We're going to slide it into place just like so. Pull it closed and then pinch it tight. As you can see, we're going to take a couple angles so you can see how it fits. This should fit right inside of here. These 2 pieces should be about parallel. You'll notice on most pipettes that it gets a little bit wider at the bottom, and so you can see there's a little bit of gapping right here. So we just want to make sure we pull our pipette a little bit further down, and then we should be able to pull it closed to reduce that gapping right there, because it does tend to bulge right around this part of the pipette. So you just need to push it up just slightly further. You should still be able to see the gauge that tells you how many microliters you have set. Since this won't close all the way. So you'll still always be able to see that portion of it. Once you've done this, you can take either a twist tie, like the ones I have here, or you can even take a screw and a bolt if you want it to be even more secure. But in our experience, a twist tie has done just fine on its own. It already is pretty tight of a fit, so as you can see, I don't even have a twist tie on it right now, and the pipette will stay in place. So you just need something nice. Twist ties work great because then you can adjust them really easily versus a screw is a little bit more difficult. So you're just going to line up those holes, twist tie that nice and tight. We may need to adjust it in a second, but for now we'll keep those there so it's easy to move. Next, we're going to make sure that the gears line up. So we're going to take our smaller gear, and just like we did in version 1.0, we're going to take this straight side here, line it up with the straight side in the gear, and then push down on that. Make sure it goes all the way down, and it should be flush with the top of the motor axle. Then you can take the larger gear. As you can see in this larger gear, there are actually grooves on the inside of it that should line up with the grooves at the top of the pipette here that's used to adjust the microliters. So you're going to take that and you're just going to line those grooves up. You're going to push down, make sure you get a nice tight seal on it. As you can see, I pushed down a little bit too hard and I pushed my pipette down. But you do need to make sure it's all the way down so that it doesn't want to come off later on. And then you do need to line it up with the gear on your motor. So this gear on the motor right now, there we go, now it's lined up. And I'm gonna slide my pipette up because as you can see, the gear motor is sticking out pretty far right now. So I'm gonna slide my pipette up just a little bit more so that those gears line up better. There we go. push down, make sure it's still fully on your pipette. I need to slide my pipette up just a smidgen more. And pushing down again on that large gear to make sure it's fully down. Made a nice suction with your pipette. Now, as you can see, if we look from the side, these are just about flush at this point, and that's where we want it. And the bottom of the larger gear here, you can barely see any of the grooves. It should be pushed down as, oops. One of the downsides to the twist size is that it is a little bit looser, so it's a little bit, well, it's a plus and a minus. It makes it a lot easier to make adjustments as you go, but then if you do push too hard, you can kind of push your whole pipette. But it's easy enough to push it back up, make sure that's tight, and then you are ready to go. As you can see in this example though, I do want to point out that I have already done all the circuitry on here. And since I had already soldered the pieces, I didn't want to take it apart for this assembly video, but I will just point out a couple of things. So first off, we have a smaller motor in this section than we did in version 1.0, and we have that slid in, but other than that, it's pretty much the exact same motor holder that you would have seen in version 1.0. Secondly, we have simply glued the motor controller or motor driver, same thing, that is glued on this side of the mount assembly. There are little pegs on the assembly piece that line up with the corners of it, so we simply glued that. You could also screw it into place, whichever works easier for you. And then on the flip side, we have Raspberry Pi. Just like the motor driver, it is simply hot glued, or I think we actually use super glue. We use super glue to just simply put it into place. As far as the wires go, we have the same setup as we did with the version 1.0. The only difference is that the ground wire on the Raspberry Pi is closer to the other wires rather than putting it at the top like we did in version 1.0. And then as you can see, we have a plug outlet for the motor driver. That's the power outlet for that. And then you would just plug in a power source into this micro USB port right here. And that's it. This right here can be put into an arm. We have a microphone stand that we use that my camera's actually on at the moment, but this slides into the microphone stand so that it'll hold it upright and we can move it wherever we want. You could also use a clamp on a ring stand. We have used that as well, and that works really well. So I hope you enjoy and have a good time using it in your lab.